17th, 2022 regular meeting to order. Ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. Before I call the roll, I would like to note for the record that Supervisor Lawson-Remer is participating via teleconference. As such, all votes will be handled by a roll call vote. With that, I will now call the roll. Supervisor Anderson. Supervisor Lawson-Remer.
Here.
Supervisor Desmond.
Here.
Vice Chair Vargas.
Vargas here.
Chair Fletcher.
Fletcher here. First on the agenda is non-agendized public communication. This is an opportunity for the public to address the board on matters within our jurisdiction but are not on today's agenda. The only action the board may take is a referral to the Chief Administrative Officer. A reminder, according to Rule 4A, members of the public that are non-English speaking and need interpretation assistance will be allotted additional time to allow for translation. According to our rules of procedure, we will hear up to 5 in-person speakers and 5 remote speakers. Any additional speakers beyond that will be heard at the conclusion of our agendized meeting. I'll ask the clerk to call forward up to 10 initial speakers.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. We have 11 total requests to speak on matters not listed on the agenda, 1 in person and 10 by phone. For those that have requested to speak via phone, if you could please dial into the conference line now using the instructions that were provided to you. We will begin with the in-person speaker. I'd like to invite Audra to the podium. You'll have 2 minutes to address the board.
Use the name Audra. So I just want to give you guys one more opportunity to think about the voting system and the fact that there is evidence with the district attorney and the sheriff department, and people are filing grand jury complaints and lawsuits. And it's happening all over the nation, but as well in San Diego and the rest of California. So it would behoove you to actually look into it. I mean, if you guys care about this county and the way things go, it would benefit you to show the people by way of saying, we're going to ensure that your elections are free, fair, and transparent. But they're not. And it's a reflection of everything that goes on here, basically. So I just urge you to please look into it, because if you don't, then you're complicit in it. And that's even worse, because then you can be held accountable because you're not doing anything about it. And it's a national security risk. I mean, CITL is a foreign entity that's involved in these elections. And they can be hooked up to the internet, these machines. And they can flip votes, they can manufacture votes, they can figure out how many they need in order to win. And so it's a huge national security risk. And it's treason to do that. And if we, care, why would you not want to look into it? Why would you just, prove me wrong, is what I'm asking you to do. Be like, you know what? Audra is full of shit. I'm going to prove that. Instead of just ignoring it. Because that doesn't get us anywhere. But we shouldn't be using these machines in November. And we better not be. Because otherwise we're just going to continue down this path and nobody's going to have a say. Because if our voice mattered, we wouldn't be able to vote.
Thank you. Now we will hear from those that requested to speak by phone. When it is your turn to speak, you will be unmuted and you will hear a recording that will tell you to begin your comments after the beep. I'd like to remind the callers that they should mute their TV or live video stream before they begin speaking. We will begin with our first caller. And again, if you could please state your name before beginning your comments.
Oliver Twist here. Good morning, board. I'm calling in this morning to publicly apologize for misspeaking during yesterday's meeting and to correct my comments. It was during item 21 on the COVID update where I spoke about continued teleconferencing, and my comment should have been this. For listeners who may not know, teleconferencing for members of a governing body is already allowed under Government Code Section 54953B, but the requirements to do so are very stringent. For example, if a supervisor wants to teleconference from her home or office, she has to post an agenda at her chosen location and also allow the public to speak from that site. So please consider this my formal errata for the record, as well as a public apology for misspeaking. For today's meeting, I'm calling in as an Alpine resident with great concerns about the continued lowering of the water levels in Loveland Reservoir. The Sweetwater Authority does not appear to be upholding the promise made during the land swap with the U.S. Forest Service, denying people recreation and fishing opportunities that were part of that deal. I'm also very concerned that lowering levels of Loveland will negatively impact the area wildlife, especially birds of prey like the golden eagle and osprey. Given the Loveland is situated in a fire hazard severity zone designated as high by the state, the needs for both water resources and aerial drops, as well as to serve as a fire break and buffer, as it did during the Valley Fire in 2020, cannot be emphatically stated enough. I'd like the county to intervene or take it over even to stop the draining of water from Loveland and lowering the level to historic lows. It negatively impacts recreation and anglers, but also Back County residents who rely on that body of water to serve as a buffer and break, as well as a vital water drop resource during firestorms. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to the next caller.
Good morning, Chair Fletcher and County Supervisors. My name is Becky Ratt. I'm a parent and public health educator. This morning, I would like to bring to your attention some news out of Sacramento County. The supervisors rejected legal marijuana sales in their rural, unincorporated areas. This is monumental, as Sacramento County is similar in size to San Diego County and would profit alike. I think it's important you acknowledge and consider the negative consequences as Sacramento has done. Residents of unincorporated communities have voiced their concerns and would encourage you to vote similarly, as it's not too late. According to a recent article in the LA Times, Northern California has permitted large-scale licensed pot farms, but this has not slowed down the illegal market. In fact, illegal marijuana cultivation has continued to thrive, often to the detriment of the environment. Illicit growers have flattened hillsides, sprayed pesticides, and diverted streams. Northern California has admitted that the problem is worse now than prior to Prop 64 passing, with over 50,000 illegal grows each year. Transforming California's marijuana market is going to take real political leadership, which has been lacking at all levels of government. I urge you to recognize that the normalization and commercialization of marijuana is not benefiting our county. Take this opportunity to turn things around and focus your efforts on drug reduction and prevention, not drug normalization. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to the next caller.
Good morning, Board of Supervisors. My name is Terry Ann Skelly. Yesterday, I spoke in support of the county's proposed tobacco retail license program. Smoking and vaping behaviors affect everyone who's exposed, and poor health costs money and public health and medical resources. The recognition that secondhand smoke, whether tobacco or marijuana, has significant risks has prompted several cities to limiting public smoking areas within their cities. The cities of Coronado, Solana Beach, Del Mar, El Cajon, Escondido, La Mesa, and Oceanside restrict smoking on sidewalks and other public venues. Parents, community members, and business owners have wanted the use of tobacco products banned in public areas for a very long time, including single-use vapes. Perhaps the county could take this significant policy step as well. As you know, this would also improve health equity for some of the county's struggling neighborhoods. This policy could also have a positive effect on our environment. San Diego State professor Dr. Tom Novotny describes cigarette butts as a toxic waste that leach out chemicals, metals, and plastics into the marine environment, and single-use vape batteries are considered hazardous waste. As Dr. Novotny states, stated, and I quote, banning outdoor smoking, tobacco, and marijuana can reduce tobacco product waste and support a community non-smoking norm. A win for citizens' health and our environment. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. We'll go to the next caller.
Diane Grace. As a parent, grandparent, and one who has served on many numerous community boards, recently the California Department of Health California Tobacco Control Program published a flyer with the effects of cannabis use during pregnancy. As stated previously by other speakers, cannabis use harms, especially people who are pregnant or thinking of becoming pregnant. Facts to consider. Women who use cannabis during pregnancy can harm their baby's development. Cannabis use while pregnant is highest among ages 18 to 25. THC and other chemicals in cannabis can be passed to a baby through breast milk, increasing the baby's risk for problems with brain development. Cannabis use before pregnancy has been increasing in recent years, with one study citing an increase from 6.8% to 12.5%. 8% of pregnant women report using cannabis while pregnant. Among women using cannabis postpartum, about 47% report that they are breastfeeding. Our county's children deserve a healthy start. Won't retail pot shops, their advertising, billboards, and promotions make that harder? Let's protect our children. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to the next caller.
Good morning. My name is Peggy Walker. And like so many in public health education, I find it appallingly irresponsible that the majority of this board, who speaks to supporting public health, consistently turn a blind eye to proliferating science-based evidence pointing to deadly hazards of today's marijuana market. A new University of Southern California School of Pharmacology white paper, for one, shows current marijuana regulations nationwide are weak, leaving consumers vulnerable. This study suggests policymakers should consider regulations that cap THC, which far surpasses levels ever imagined when Prop 64 passed, and place purchase limits on high-potency products like edibles and vape cartridges. This is done in countries abroad looking to protect consumers first. Allowing the industry to self-regulate in U.S. states that have legalized has generated products far more potent and widely diverse than in other countries, according to Rosalie Takula, a senior fellow at USC and co-author of this study. This approach, she warned, leaves U.S. consumers susceptible to addiction and other harms. I urge you as policymakers to place our most vulnerable, especially those under 25, over the interests of an addiction-based industry. Enact responsible policy actions, as suggested by USC experts, including THC caps, purchase limits, and responsible warning labels. As is done in more enlightened countries, these countries are seeking to limit marijuana-related illness and mental health issues. Please take a listen. Thank you.
Thank you. For the remaining callers that requested to speak on a matter not listed on the agenda, if you could please hang up and call back at the conclusion of the session. Chair Fletcher, that concludes the request for non-agenda public communication this morning.
We'll now proceed with the formation of our consent calendar. Members of the public will have the opportunity to comment on the consent calendar after supervisors have had the chance to make comments, along with the opportunity to pull any items they wish to move to discussion. We'll start with Supervisor Anderson. Are there any items you wish to be pulled or comments you wish to make?
Not at this time, thank you.
All right, thank you. Supervisor Lawson-Remer.
Not at this time, thank you.
Supervisor Desmond?
None to pull. I got a couple of comments. So, first of all, on item 2, this is to advertise award for construction of 3 traffic signals. And I want to say thank you very much to the DPW team, Department of Public Works team out there. They're always on top of it, and I'm grateful to see these 3 traffic signals. I know nobody likes sitting at traffic lights, but definitely some places are needed. So 2 of which of the 3 are in my district. And it's great to see the one at in Discovery, in Lake San Marcos at Discovery and San Pablo. This is also right next to San Marcos High School. And it gets a little challenging during a school in session, which is starting soon, if not today. And I know this is particularly of interest to the residents there. They've been waiting for this for a long, long time. And also, I've heard some concerns from the folks in Valley Center about the light on Ridge Ranch Road. It's my understanding that it's going to be defaulted to green to keep the arterial Valley Center Road moving as much as possible. It's only going to turn red for left in or out of Ridge Ranch Road, which is good. And I appreciate the clarification and getting that on that particular light. So thanks again for DPW for the great work on that. And then also in item number 6, this is direct staff to apply for a Sustainable Agricultural Conservation Lands Program grant. And I want to thank Davi and the PDS staff for their work on that. With this funding, the county, planning, and LAFCO are joined together on this one to work together to analyze and report challenges to threats to our San Diego County's agricultural industry. Once they have a clear understanding of the trends and the issues, the study, or the grant, hopefully dollars to pay for the study, will provide recommendations on how to support our local ag industry and to keep them resilient and sustainable. It was concerning to learn that there's been like a 20% loss of avocado groves in the Fallbrook area. And this action will hopefully take action to, help advise the farmers in the ag industry for sustainability and what they can do next. So appreciate the joint work between our PDS staff and LAFCO on that. So thank you very much. And no other items. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. Vice Chair Vargas.
Thank you, Chair. I really just want to first and foremost thank the Parks and Rec Department for partnering with my office to identify opportunities to address the park deficiencies, communities that are underinvested. The proposed 64-acre Tijuana River Valley Regional Park Active Recreation and Community Park will be a regional icon once it's built. This project scored the highest in the Department of Parks Rec capital investment model for all South Bay projects proposed for the next 5 years. And it's going to result in a great economic opportunity for the region because there will be a place for multiple competition ball fields and sport opportunities for our youth. So I'm really looking forward to hopefully receiving good news that we get additional funding. And it's a beginning of a bigger investment for our communities who are in desperate need of quality parks with restrooms and recreation opportunities. And I think you've heard about my restroom situation in South Bay, so in our park. So I'm really, really, really happy about item number 4. And then on item number 6, I just want to say thank you to Supervisor Desmond for working with LAFCO and for bringing this item to the board to work with our staff for identifying funds that, if awarded, will result in advancing agricultural sustainability in our region. I think it's super important, and we do need strategies to advance our agricultural community resilience and climate goals. So I'm happy to support this, and I'm happy to make a motion on our consent calendar.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm happy to second that motion. I don't have any items to pull, but I do want to comment on item 4. It's great to see us going after all types of federal and state funding, and we think that this is an important program that can commend and really work a lot of the work that Vice Chair Vargas is doing down there. So it's a wonderful thing to see, and excited to see that coming. Also want to give a plug to our Experience Outdoors program that our Park Service has launched as we build out our regional parks. A wonderful opportunity for folks to get out and have an experience with ranger-assisted efforts, with gear being provided. The Parks 101 First Time Series will give you the opportunity to do that. Astronomy 101 is coming up on August 20th. Ranger-led hiking on August 27th, and kayaking and fishing on September 24th. So it's great to see our investment in our regional parks, and want to continue to get folks active and engaged with all of that. With that, we have no items being pulled. We have a motion and a second. Let's hear from our public speakers, and we'll come back and vote.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. We do have 2 total requests to speak on items on the consent calendar. We have 1 individual in person and one person requesting to speak by phone. Any members of the public that have requested to speak on the items on the consent calendar via phone, if you could please dial into the conference line now using the instructions that were provided to you. We'll begin with the in-person speaker, and I'd like to invite forward Audra. You'll have 2 minutes to address the board.
Use the name Audra, so I don't know. Like some things sound good, and then I just think about what the goal is behind everything of the New World Order and bringing us into things that are more government and less control of the people. So it's just kind of terrifying, but you have, you're going to put a community park in the Tijuana River Valley. That seems very strange when the water is so polluted. Why would you do that? I mean, you can't even fix that, and then you're gonna have people go be by that in those conditions. It just doesn't seem logical to me. But nothing you guys do usually does. There's declining agro trends or whatever in Fallbrook. Jim, it's way more than 20%. Almost everybody's planted oranges there because they can't afford to water because we're in a drought, even though there's unlimited water in the earth, but that's okay. And I don't know how $450,000 is gonna help small farms when you're spending millions on other things. And you want these, sorry, I'm totally off. I don't know, it's just, wow, my brain just shut off. But the fact it's I don't think we need government in our farming because there's already a decline of that. They're having people get rid of their crops and stuff like that. I just would hope that it wouldn't be something that would lead people to actually lose everything they have. So, I don't know.
Thank you. Now we will hear from those that have requested to speak by phone. When it is your turn to speak, you will be unmuted and you will hear a recording that will tell you to begin your comments after the beep. I'd like to remind the callers they should mute their TV or live video stream before they begin speaking, and we will begin with our caller.
It's truth. Item 2, over $3 million for only 3 traffic lights. Item 3, they're spending over $25 million on this Lindo Lake project, and Granite Construction Company will get paid millions. And $700,000 plus will be spent just for bentonite clay. Item 4 calls the people who live in Nestor disadvantaged, which is pretty offensive. This item is spending almost $38 million to add 64 acres to the Tijuana River Valley Regional Park. Item 5, I'd like to know why the unnamed road doesn't have a name. I'm just curious. Item 6, we have the supervisors pretending to care about a decline in agricultural development and management, when through the PACE program, agricultural property owners are offered a few bucks to stop using their land to live on and give the county a perpetual easement. That's eternal control over their property. The county has spent over $7.8 million on that program. So when this item says, quote, with ever-shifting political priorities, farmers are increasingly at risk of going out of business, end quote. I agree. Encouraging carbon sequestration projects like the item says won't aid in creating a stronger food supply. It will just keep the land undeveloped. It reminds me of a line where Nathan said, quote, look, we're still going to eat in the future, end quote. And I've always wondered, eat what exactly? When you push people away from the rural areas and into smart city mobility hubs as part of Sandag's regional plan, as well as leaving land undeveloped except for the toxic renewable energy infrastructure as part of the county's upcoming decarbonization framework, I ask, eat what and live where? If the people out there listening don't show up and speak against the decarbonization framework final approval at the August 30th and 31st meetings, you're going to be asking yourselves the same thing. Where are you going to live, and what do you...
Thank you. Your time is up. Chair Fletcher, that concludes public comment on the items on the consent calendar.
Vice Chair Vargas.
I just had a wonderful reminder, Chair, that I want to make sure that as you're talking about outdoor parks and stuff, that I would love to encourage folks to join and make sure that they make a reservation and use the camp facilities in the Tijuana River Valley. There is no dirty water there. There's no pollution in that piece of the camp. The reason why we're working so hard to expand that whole region is because it is one of the beautiful natural habitats that we have in South County. And so for those folks that don't get south of the 8, come visit us. There's a lot of great opportunities to join the beautiful community of South Bay and, get up to date on what the real information is.
Thank you. Thank you, Vice Chair. We have a motion by Vice Chair Vargas, seconded myself, to approve the consent calendars. Ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. Supervisor Anderson.
Aye.
Supervisor Lawson-Remer.
Aye.
Supervisor Desmond.
Aye.
Vice Chair Vargas.
Vargas, aye.
Chair Fletcher.
Fletcher, aye.
That motion passes unanimously with all supervisors being present voting aye.
We'll go to our first discussion item, an administrative item, second consideration and adoption of ordinance related to grading and clearing. I'll make a motion to approve. Is there a second? Second by Supervisor Anderson. Let me ask the clerk to call forward the public speakers in this item, and then we'll go to Vice Chair Vargas after that.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. We have 2 total requests to speak on this item, 1 in person and 1 via phone. Also like to note for the record that we did not receive any e-comments on this item. If any members of the public that have requested to speak on this item by phone, if you could please dial into the conference line now with the instructions that were provided to you. We'll begin with the in-person caller, or the in-person speaker, and we'd like to invite forward Audra. You'll have 2 minutes to address the board.
I thought I can call in if you'd like, that's fine. I use the name Audra. So agro clearing permits, I just think this is a bunch of BS. Like, we're asking for permission, like I said before. Like, why do we need to ask you guys what we can do with the land that we bought? Do you guys own it? I mean, technically you do, right? But it's like, why are we having to do this where it's like it takes a year to process? You may only do 3 of them. And you're gonna do like a review and be like, well, okay, you can do that with your land, or maybe you can't, but taking a year to do that, if somebody needs to make money, why are they waiting on you to process an application and a permit? And we're just like, can I do that? I mean, I might as well ask you if I can go to the bathroom. I feel like I need a permit for that. Is it okay? Is it okay if I brush my teeth today? Is it okay if I, eat? I mean, I feel like we're just giving you guys all this power to dictate things in our lives, and they don't need to be, like, we don't need to do that. And it's just to process one, it's like $15,000 to $85,000. That's a big difference. That's like, it's a lot of money to process an application. It's very weird that we're even asking for permission. And so then it's going to cost $1,220,000. It's just weird. So, I mean, people need to quit asking for permission. You might as well just do whatever you want to your land instead of going, hey, I'm going to go ask if I can do this today. I mean, but then are you going to arrest people if they do that? I mean, is it illegal to that extent if you don't ask for permission? Because you guys do whatever you want and you don't ask us for permission.
Thank you. Now we will hear from those that have requested to speak by phone. I'd like to remind the callers they should mute their TV or live video stream before they begin speaking, and we'll begin with our caller.
Hey, it's Truth. Comparing item 7 to item 6, I think I found another reason why farmers are having trouble growing crops. They're being charged agricultural clearing permit fees just to remove natural vegetation to allow use of their own property. You supervisors are expecting farmers to waste money begging you for permission on what to do with their own property and then having their property subjected to an environmental review. The same applies for when farmers want to install a groundwater well or landscaping on their own land. When are farmers expected to have the money and time to grow crops for all of us to eat if they're being subjected to this kind of regulation and control? The item also mentions streamlining processes for the multiple species conservation plans. Those plans have already acquired 56,000 acres of land using 85 different species as excuses. Well, the golden eagle and bald eagle are both on the county's covered species list, but yet they're being killed by the toxic wind turbines these supervisors are promoting with their upcoming regional decarbonization framework. From a East County Magazine article from this year, quote, a 2013 study found wind turbines were killing over 500,000 birds annually in the U.S. The Altamont wind resource area in Northern California alone killed over 2,000 golden eagles, end quote. Not to mention, the wind turbines emit low frequency and infrasound waves. Streamline processes for food insecurity, toxic machinery, and for the extinction of our national bird. That's what I'm hearing. Could we at least make sure that the chopped up eagle meat doesn't go to waste, especially since the cost of Ordinance Part 1 and Part 2 is $1,220,000.
Thank you. And Chair Fletcher, that concludes public comment on this item.
All right, we have a motion by myself, seconded by Supervisor Anderson. Let me ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Thank you. Supervisor Anderson.
Aye.
Supervisor Lawson-Remer.
Aye.
One more time, Supervisor Lawson-Remer, I couldn't hear you.
Aye.
Thank you. Supervisor Desmond.
Aye.
Vice Chair Vargas. Chair Fletcher.
Fletcher, aye.
That motion passes unanimously with all supervisors being present, voting aye.
Go to agenda item number 8, Traffic Advisory Committee, adopt recommendations. I'll make a motion to approve. Is there a second? Second by Vice Chair Vargas. Let me ask the clerk to call forward the speakers in this item.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. We have 4 total requests to speak, 1 individual in person, and 3 requesting to speak by phone. I'd like to also note for the record, we did not receive any e-comments on this item. Any members of the public that have requested to speak on this item by phone, if you could please dial into the conference line now using the instructions that were provided to you. We will begin with the in-person speakers, and I would like to invite forward Audra. You'll have 2 minutes to address the board.
Use the name Audra. So this is kind of going in what I was trying to talk about before, but my brain stopped working. But it's about the whole, World Economic Forum's sustainable road usage charge plan, or just road usage plan. So it's like you want to use the highway user tax, which, they always, want to tax us for stuff so that you can use it. But the plan with the roads and everything is to make it so that everybody has to walk, bike, or take public transit. They don't want us, you guys don't want us driving anywhere, because that's, like, we could actually escape. It's like run, because then nobody can catch you. Then we can catch, whatever. But yeah, it's just interesting the way they talk about this. It's like road design is no longer about automobility. Complete streets include controlling and reducing vehicular speed, reducing the number of lanes. This is an opportunity to shape the future of land use and development in ways that encourage use of alternate modes of transportation. That's the U.S. Department of Transportation Complete Streets policies. So that's what you guys are basically doing. You're like taking access from people you want. It's like, it seems nice. I'm gonna, like reduce roads and do whatever you're doing. But that's a whole plan that the World Economic Forum has, Nathan. And it's like, I know you think that we're stupid and that we don't see like what's happening, but it's like, they want to put, tracking things in our cars. They already basically have that with OnStar, but make it so that we can't like leave the county or your smart cities. And that's dangerous, because it's like, I don't think people see the bigger picture here. But all of the things that you do are leading us into that. And it's actually terrifying that nobody cares.
Thank you. Now we will hear from those that have requested to speak by phone. When it is your turn to speak, you will be unmuted and you will hear a recording that will tell you to begin your comments after the beep. Would like to remind the callers they should mute their TV or live video stream before they begin speaking. And we'll begin with our first caller.
Good morning, Board. Kathleen Lippett here. I'd like to address item 8 regarding the Traffic Advisory Committee and with policies that are ostensibly to increase safety and reduce congestion and be legally enforceable so that the majority of motorists will comply. Respectfully, I would like to offer that consumption lounges would undermine these goals of enhancing safety. So please look at what consumption lounges, how they would impact this goal, and I would appreciate. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to the next caller.
Consuelo, I'd like you to hear a video on somebody who's a specialist on clearing agricultural channels.
Selfish leaders, selfish generation, selfish 21st century, selfish, you will destroy yourself by yourself. Very well, what is happening is nothing but deliberate evil action by the secret societies. It doesn't benefit a man if he gains the whole world, yet at the end loses himself. So what, you're a prime minister? So what, you're a president? So what, you're a king? So what, you're a church leader? Stop enslaving people. And enough lies. Enough lockdowns. And enough so-called corona. It can be treated quite easily with proven medications, not untested, so-called experimental vaccines done by evil intentions. Let Bill Gates jab himself with it. Let the Rockefeller jab themselves with it. Let the Rothschild jab themselves with it. Let Klaus Schwab jab himself with it. Let George Soros jab himself with it. Enough stupidity. Enough. Stop forcing people to take vaccination because of safety measures. You're alive. Your so-called PCR testing kits are a fraud. Your statistics are a fraud. The World Health Organization is a fraud. NIH, Anthony Fauci is a fraud. Is there anyone among you to be a man to stand up and speak the truth, even if it takes them to be kicked out?
Nathan.
Are you all cowards? Money blind?
Thank you. Your time is up. We'll go to our next caller.
This is Truth, and I'm here to flip the script again. I want to give a shout out to the hard worker in the chat room. I don't know how much I'm going to flip it, though, because it seemed like Audra was pretty well informed somehow and beat me to some point. So this item's reducing the speed limit from 35 miles per hour to 30 on Nordal Road near El Norte Parkway to Knob Hill Road and San Marcos Escondido. Well, the lowering of speed limits that we occasionally see in these land use meetings is often due to the gradual implementation of the U.S. Department of Transportation's Complete Streets Plan, whose policies include, quote, controlling and reducing vehicular speed, end quote, amongst many other anti-car agenda goals. Even reading the item's equity impact statement, it says, quote, the transportation system must be safe for all modes of transportation, end quote. That statement reads right out of the U.S. Department of Transportation's Complete Streets Plan, whose policies also include, quote, road design is no longer about automobility. This is an opportunity to shape the future of development in ways that encourage the use of alternate modes for transportation, end quote. And that alternate transportation is walking, biking, and scootering, for those that don't know. All of DOT's imagery tries to justify their anti-car agenda by claiming to care about the safety of active transportation users. That's people with no car. This is what this item is really suggesting by all modes of transportation. The funding source for this item is the state highway user tax account, yet it has nothing to do with highways. Isn't that interesting?
And Chair Fletcher, that concludes public comment on this item.
All right, we've got a motion by myself, second by Vice Chair Vargas. Let me ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. Supervisor Anderson.
Aye.
Supervisor Lawson-Remer.
Aye.
Supervisor Desmond.
Aye.
Vice Chair Vargas.
Vargas, aye.
Chair Fletcher.
Fletcher, aye.
That motion passes unanimously with all supervisors being present, voting aye.
We're going to go to agenda item number 9, Community Identification Signage Program. And right away, I'm very interested in this. In my district, University Heights, El Cajon Boulevard, Hillcrest, other areas have community signs, and it creates a sense of community and fosters a sense of identity, which I think is good. Appreciate Supervisor Desmond originating this item. I don't know if you have any introductory comments you'd like to make, or if you want to go straight to the presentation.
Why don't we go straight to the presentation?
Okay.
And talk after
Let's hear
that.
from
Thank you.
staff, yeah.
Good morning, Chairman, Chair Fletcher, and members of the board. My name is Murali Pasumarthy, and I'm the Traffic Engineering Manager at in the Department of Public Works. On October 5th, 2021, the board approved a recommendation by Supervisor Desmond directing development of a decorative community identification sign program for the 5th District and to return to the board with options for approval. Today, we are presenting options for permitting and constructing decorative signs using the feedback provided by the 5th District communities for your board's consideration and further direction. Next slide, please. Currently, there are 2 existing programs for unincorporated communities that may want to display community pride, identity through signs along county-maintained roads. The first program, as you see here, is called a Green Signs Program, which allows communities to request ground-mounted signs that include the name of each community and are used as directional guides by motorists and bicyclists. These signs are available at no cost to communities and are installed and maintained by DPW. Over the last 30 years, 90 such signs have been installed in 40 communities, and they're requested usually through the local community planning sponsor groups. The second program, Decorative Community Identification Signs, is an applicant-funded process that was approved by the board on January 29, 2014. This program includes guidelines for installing decorative street-spanning or ground-mounted signs and banners located at primary entrances to communities. Applicants are responsible for all costs, including planning, permitting, design, installation, and maintenance. The total cost to applicants ranges from $75,000 to $245,000 per sign, depending on design, width, and structural features. The communities of Lakeside, Fallbrook, and Valladero have utilized this existing decorative community identification sign program, with the Lakeside Chamber of Commerce leading the effort to install the street-spanning decorative sign on Main Avenue. It took about 2 years for them to complete the project. In response to the October board direction, staff conducted public outreach efforts to CPSGs in the 5th District. The CPSGs expressed support for decorative community signs and shared that these signs promote rural heritage, showcase community, and enhance scenic corridors. Through this outreach, the CPSGs also expressed a desire for a program option where the requester would take the lead in developing the architectural concept for the sign and recommended that the county consider funding the program and have county staff handle the design and construction of the signs. Based on the feedback provided by the CPSGs, we prepared the following options for the decorative signs program. In addition to maintaining the 2 existing programs for the Green Community Identity signs and the applicant-funded decorative community identification signs, the board could consider adding a fee waiver for the decorative signs program that would reduce the cost to the applicants for pre-consultation and permit application fee. Funds for construction and maintenance would still be paid by the applicant. DPW and PDS do not currently have funding allocated for the decorative sign program in the fiscal year 22-23 operations plan. If the board directs this option, staff will return in 180 days to establish the ordinance for the fee waiver program. If funding for the program is identified, staff would also establish appropriations to offset the fee waiver. The board could also consider a county-funded and county staff-facilitated decorative sign program as recommended by the CPSGs. Staff would work with the requesters and engage with the planning and sponsor groups and the board office to develop an architectural concept and layout for each sign, As part of this option, requesters with a sign concept will first engage with the CPSGs for initial support for the county to design and install a decorative sign in that community. Next, county staff will then begin pre-consultation and review layout for cost, timeline, and CEQA requirements. Staff and requesters will then obtain approval of the architectural concept from the CPSGs, and then staff will develop a preliminary design and work with the board office and requester to finalize the concept before moving into construction. After the sign is installed, the anticipated ongoing annual maintenance cost is $500 to $5,000 per sign outside of any unplanned major repairs due to damages. Currently, there is no funding allocated for a county staff facilitated decorative sign program. This option will need an identified funding source for county staff involvement in one or more phases, such as design and/or construction. The district office in which the sign is located would docket a board letter requesting approval of funding before county staff begin pre-consultation for each decorative sign. For the decorative sign program, staff have developed the following 3 options. The board could also propose variations to the options proposed by staff. If the board chooses option 3A in first column, to maintain the existing applicant and funded program for decorative signs, then applicants will continue to be responsible for all costs, including planning, permitting, design, installation, and maintenance. The total cost to applicants could range from $75,000 to $245,000 per sign, depending on design, width, and structural features. Applicants would also have the flexibility to hire a contractor for their choosing and could use volunteers throughout the entire process. If the board chooses option 3B, it will establish a fee waiver program to reduce the cost to the applicants for pre-consultation and permit application fee. The waiver would also include county staff time and permits. This could cost the county $10,000 to $20,000 per sign, and the cost to the applicants would then range from $65,000 to $225,000. If the board chooses option 3C, the county will be responsible for all costs, including planning, permitting, design, installation, and maintenance. The total cost to the county could range from $165,000 to $590,000 per sign, depending on design, width, and structural features. Option 3C showcases an increase in cost compared to option 3A and 3B because county staff would handle all phases of the project. This option would also require a competitive bid and prevailing wage requirements, as is needed for all county-funded and facilitated projects. For all 3 options shared today, the road fund cannot be used as a funding source, as community identification signs are considered an amenity. If the board chooses either option 3B and/or 3C, the board may also consider the geographic area for which these options would apply. Option 4A is District 5 unincorporated communities only. Option 4B is to open it up for all unincorporated communities in all of the supervisory districts. So in conclusion, today the recommended actions are: 1, the program options remain in compliance with the CEQA. Our recommendation is to maintain the existing green signs program with no changes. And for the decorative signs program, the board may select one of the following options. 3A, no changes to the existing applicant-funded decorative sign program. 3B, develop a fee waiver for the existing decorative sign program. Or 3C, approve a new staff-facilitated county-funded decorative sign program. And the geographic area for which these options, if 3B or 3C are selected. This concludes staff's presentation, and we are available to answer any questions.
Thank you. Let's go to Supervisor Desmond, and then we'll hear from our public speakers.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate that. And I appreciate all the hard work, Morella, you and the staff put together, and all the outreach that you did to all of the community sponsor and planning groups. 8 of the 9 sponsor groups in North County expressed interest. The only reason the other one didn't because they didn't have a quorum, and they couldn't. So, and I really never intended this only to be for District 5. Primarily, I think it was my NRP or CE dollars that we paid for staff time to do the research and outreach. So that's the only reason D5's is in there so much. But many of these communities and smaller communities, particularly out in the unincorporated areas like Rainbow, we got Boulevard, we got very smaller and larger communities. we're their city hall. They don't have any other resources. They don't really, if they want a community sign, they don't have the wherewithal for the design and things like that. And so, I'd love to be able to waive the fees, the initial fees, and maybe look at some of the design work to help out and maybe offset some of the costs. But what I think what we should do today is craft, as much flexibility into the program as possible, which essentially would serve as a framework for processing community identification signs. So my intent is today to ask for that we waive the fees. It's like $10,000 to $20,000 per sign. And this is only if a community is interested and they want to come forward with it. And then in 3C, to also have every sign would have to come back to the board on a case-by-case basis. So that we would look at the board, and then we as a board could decide to pay for all, to pay for none, to pay for some of the county, of the signs, maybe some of the final design and construction. It's up to us to make that decision. But what I really kind of envisioned in this is, resources and dollars, would also come from the board office through NRP or CE dollars, could actually help to offset some of those construction costs, things like that. And then from the community. I'd like to see the community put, some money in the game as well. And then maybe we come back to the Board of Supervisors for maybe to make up a delta or something to that extent is really kind of how I envision this thing. But to have every one of them come back to the board for, for options for us to decide how much we want to put into this and have our final decision. So I'm going to, for discussion, put forward a motion that we adopt recommendation number 1, which is the CEQA findings, and then keep the green signs that are in place that are currently there, but to adopt 3B, which is basically to waive the county permits on the larger community signs, and then also adopt 3C to give the county framework and flexibility to come back to the board with these signs, to see what the community brings, what they have to the table, and we have the option to vote up or down on how many dollars, if any at all, that we want to put towards these. And then adopt 4B to allow this to be countywide, not just in the 5th district. So motion would be keep recommendations 1 and 2, and then option 3B and 3C and 4B. Thank you.
All right. Why don't we hear from our public speakers real quick? If that's, well, go ahead. Go ahead if you want, Vice Chair. Yeah.
I'm happy to second it, but I just have a question around for staff. I have a question specifically for staff. Could we go with option B right now, and then when they come back to the board with 100 days, give us an option of how to include option C into it? I'm concerned about the amount of money that would be spending on option C. So I'm thinking about how do we bifurcate number B so that maybe in their response to us in the 180 days, they could actually give us some recommendations, because I'm concerned about how many, what communities, what does it mean? And then we have different, the level of incorporators that we have throughout the county varies by district, and so and some communities have much more resources than others. How do we prioritize? And so when looking at it from an equity lens, I'm a little bit concerned about what that looks like, and I'm not sure that I'm prepared to support the option C, but I'm able to support everything else. So I just wanted to see if maybe staff could see if they could bifurcate number B to say in the 180-day option, they can give us some boundaries about what option C would look like. If you're
well, let's hear, I guess, hear from people. I'd like to get 3C in here just so that we have the framework. And be honest with you, they would come back, and then the boards could decide. We'd have the flexibility on that, on 3C, more flexibility, I guess, on 3C, because every sign is going to have to come back to the board. And so we would waive the permit fees and then have every sign come back, and then we decide how much goes into each one, because you're right, and we weigh in the equity, and we weigh in, the size of the community. Fallbrook's probably got more money than Boulevard, or things like that. So I think that's already built into 3C. So I think maybe we can hear from.
We're going to go to Supervisor Lawson-Remer in a sec. Just one quick thing, I think, on 3C. Look, I think there's something that we can do there, but I think we're kind of adopting something without a real sense, well, maybe this one, one by one. I don't know. I mean, I'd like to have 3C come back and have a more robust discussion on that, because, You know, I see in Equitwood, in some places there could be matching programs, right? If there's some money and then maybe the county matches or supervisors can do NRP. So, I mean, I think we're supportive. I guess the question before us is, you know, we know we can go on 3B and then come back and develop have a little more robust discussion on options on 3C to put in place. I think it's good, and I think we can get somewhere. You know, I think you're hearing from board members, we just want to flush that out a little bit more with a little more countywide look. Because initially, and this was no knock, because you paid for it yourself, it had only looked at D5, and we could look at all of them. And maybe we don't have to wait 180 days. Maybe we could come back quicker, you know, with some options on 3C. Because I think there's a desire to get a sign program here done. I don't inherently know that it's like, well, we just bring each sign one by one, you know, different thing. It might be better to have a little more developed process. But let's see. Let's go to Supervisor Lawson-Remer, and then we'll come back. We also want to get to our public speakers and hear from them before we make a decision.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. Yeah, just a couple thoughts. I think first of all, I am obviously concerned about the fact that it could end up being sort of like spiraling costs. I don't think we have an adequate understanding or assessment of if we looked countywide, how many signs we're really talking about, because the initial look was just a D5. And I would not be prepared to support option C today for two reasons. One, because I think we just really don't know how many communities might even be interested in signs and what the overall annual cost of this program could be. But secondly, because I think a framework where it's sort of like one-off, every sign comes without kind of already some clarity on what's likely to get funded and what's likely to not get funded is going to be very burdensome on communities, because they're going to do all this work on design and then sort of show up to advocate for their sign. And I actually think we're much better off with some options from staff on a framework that looks at matching funds, or maybe it's some sort of cap on how much the county would contribute, that would have to match board office contributions, that would ensure that we're not just ending up with lots and lots of asks every single meeting that end up adding up in a one-off way to millions and millions of dollars every year and taking away from some of our really important, sustainability and equity priorities that are cross-cutting across the county. That being said, I agree. I think obviously there's a lot of community pride that comes from a sign, and I think I would be comfortable with supporting the fee waiver at this time, as long as we're making sure that this is countywide and not just for D5. But I would not be comfortable right now moving forward with something beyond a fee waiver, because I just think it's way too willy-nilly. Doesn't provide enough structure, and we don't have enough information about what the cost could end up being. So, and I also just want to say I appreciate Supervisor Desmond, your ingenuity in driving this forward and sort of investigating something that I know is important to you and your community, and investing your neighborhood reinvestment funds in getting this proposal together. And I think that kind of investment by board offices in the signs is something that will have to be part of any kind of framework that comes back. It can't, we have to sort of expect that board offices are going to have skin in the game. It can't just be sort of broader general funds. So I think that's a good role model. So those are my initial thoughts. So I think I would not, Supervisor doesn't be able to support the motion as you made it, but if we would be able to bifurcate it, ask staff to come back with additional options on C, I would be able to support the fee waiver, as well as keeping the green sign program and expanding it countywide.
Why don't we hear from our public speakers, and then we'll get their thoughts and input, and then we can come back as a board and try and land the plane here.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. We have 12 total requests to speak on this item, 3 individuals in person and 9 requesting to speak by phone. I'd also like to note for the record, we received 4 e-comments on this item, 3 in favor and 1 that was neutral. Any members of the public that have requested to speak on this item by phone, if you could please dial into the conference line now using the instructions that were provided to you. We will begin with the in-person speakers. As your name is called, if you could please come forward and stand against the east wall under the murals until it is your turn to speak. I'd like to invite forward the following individuals: Audra, Mike, and I believe it's Margaret. You'll have 2 minutes to address the board, and if you could please state your name before beginning your comments for the record.
Good morning, Board of Supervisors. I'm Margit Whitlock. I reside in San Diego, but I also have property in District 2 in Jacumba, the unincorporated town of Jacumba. And I would be in favor of your proposal, Mr. Desmond, about option 3B and 3C as something to be investigated and looked at, and maybe a framework possession for it. And also 4B, where we'd incorporate this for all unincorporated, communities in San Diego. I'm an architect, and so I have a different perspective about the built environment, and I really see that these kinds of community investments are really important, especially when you have very small towns, and they're kind of out there, kind of on their own. And so it would be really beautiful to see these kinds of signs that would develop a really nice community involvement, tourism, selfie presentations, whatever. So I really support your efforts in this, and I really thank you for your time today.
Hey, good morning. My name is Mike Appleman. I live in Escondido, where we just got a new road spanning sign, and then I have property in Palomar Mountain, which is why I have involvement with the sponsor group in District 5. Initially, I thought it was just an extension of the green sign program, so I saw the email, and I got 100 emails a day, so I ignored it. It came up in the sponsor group meeting, and somebody had bothered one of our other people to call, and appreciate Public Works had actually informed them that, no, it's any kind of sign, and a road spanning sign. As soon as I heard that, our sponsor group, the room changed. All of a sudden, everybody was interested, and everyone thought this is a neat thing. We formed even a little subcommittee of people to start exploring some designs. As a sponsor group, we don't have budgets or funding, so we, kind of limited how far we can go. To Supervisor Desmond's point, once you get in the backcountry, you don't really, excluding somewhere like Julian, you don't really have a lot of funding or Chamber of Commerce. You just have small communities. It's hard. I mean, you look on the sponsor groups out there, and a lot of them aren't even full. So 5-group sponsor, they're very small. So ultimately, I'd love to see the program for Palomar. I started talking to Julian, Ramona, Jacumba, Boulevard, and come to find out, they didn't know anything about it in District 2 because it was initially a limited proposal. Of course, I'd love to see it in the entire unincorporated. Subsequently, on the funding side, I didn't have all the details, but I had heard some of the stuff ahead of time. Funding is a concern. I realize if we saw those numbers, it's 3x the cost if the county takes it on. I would like to see, sorry, I'm going to be running out of seconds here, but if we could look at the CE grant. I have gone through the financials over the last few years on the TOT tax and what we collect. The county now delineates it. So in the smallest community of Palomar, we, may I proceed? Okay, thank you. We would actually be able to fit within that framework with 1 year worth of tax. Somewhere like Julian is more in the 400,000 a year, 500,000, so they'd easily be able to do it. So the CE grant would be ideal, fits the category, and it also takes the burden off the county as an expenditure. Thank you.
That was so nice to do that for him. Thanks. I'll use the name Audra. So how do they take 2 years to complete? That seems like a really long time to wait for a sign. I mean, all your guys' construction, it's like, we want to do 100,000 homes, but we can only complete 12%. Does that mean the sign is only going to be like 12% complete? Or like, you're going to just have the two things and then be like, we need more funding for this? The construction costs have gone up. It's crazy. But why, how do you figure like that's how much it's going to cost for a sign? Wouldn't it be that you would design it and then say, this is how much it costs? And why is there such a big difference in what the county would pay? It's like double. Like, we're gonna need more money if we pay for it, but if you guys pay for it, it's a little bit less. It's like half price. It's like, and then Jim, you want the community help with funding, and it's like, isn't everything mostly the money you guys spend from the people? Like, don't we already give you that money? And then it's like, you know what, could you match that? The money you already gave us, we're gonna have you pay more. Does that make sense? It's very weird. And I don't know, like the idea is nice to put these signs up. I'm not like knocking that, but just the way you guys do stuff, it's like, why not do it per sign? Why do the permits cost $10,000 to $20,000? Like, it's nuts that we have to pay these kinds of things just to put up a sign. Like, you want to put that up, it's going to cost you $10,000 to $20,000. I mean, yeah, so you should waive that fee, but you should waive all permit fees for everything. Like, we don't need to just keep asking you guys for stuff, being like, it just costs more money, but we're going to spend the money you already gave us and then make you pay more on top of that. So it's great.
Thank you. We will now hear from those that have requested to speak by phone. When it is your turn to speak, you'll be unmuted and you will hear a recording that will tell you to begin your comments after the beep. I would like to remind the callers that they should mute their TV or live video stream before they begin speaking, and we will begin with our first caller.
Hi, this is Diane Johnson in Borrego Springs. I'm an officer of the Borrego Village Association, which has been formed to get the whole community involved in making Borrego sustainable. And the way that we see to do that is by developing sustainable tourism. So we very much appreciate Supervisor Desmond, and I support all of the options that he recommended. We're told that Borrego Springs is next in line to update our community plan, and I think this would be an excellent way to begin to bring the community together, talking about the design of this sign, to work on that. We have received, the Borrego Village Association has received DE grants from Supervisor Desmond working on this kind of thing. And I'd also like to note that we've brought in some nice money from the state, from the Department of Water Resources, to help us in doing water and general community planning. So I appreciate you considering this, the options that Supervisor Desmond suggested. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to the next caller.
Good morning, Chair Fletcher and Supervisors. This is Eileen Delaney, Chair of the Fallbrook Planning Group. The Fallbrook Planning Group has wholeheartedly supported the signs and banners in the public right-of-way program since its inception in 2014. Since then, we have established this program with the Fallbrook Chamber of Commerce as the lead. Fallbrook Planning Group recommended wayfinding signs throughout the community, and we've seen these signs come to fruition, and the community loves them. The Fallbrook Planning Group has also approved the concept of gateway street spanning signs. However, due to the cost associated with these signs, we have been unable to move forward on them. Therefore, we strongly support Supervisor Desmond's plan establishing either 3B or 3C process that would allow us to have a community identifying gateway spanning, street spanning signs. These signs will help the aesthetics of our town and revitalization as well. They will help with tourism, and that in turn will help support our businesses and our rural way of life. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak.
Thank you. We'll go to the next caller.
Good morning. I'm Blair Overstreet calling on behalf of the Center on Policy Initiative to register support for County Staff Recommendation 3B to develop a fee waiver for the existing Decorative Community Identification Signage Program process. Changes proposed in 3C would result in an increase of anywhere from $165,000 to $590,000 per sign coming out of county funds, not including ongoing maintenance costs. In addition, county staff would need to allocate already limited time and resources to engineering, design, construction, and maintenance. The board letter states that decorative signs provide communities an opportunity to share the history of the area and welcome visitors. We know from our work with San Diegans across the region that having a sense of connection with and pride in one's community is often a motivating factor for all kinds of civic engagement. We know from our work with all kinds of people that having a name, one that we adopt ourselves, and that others recognize and respect can improve health and well-being. So we understand why some geographic communities might want larger signs to let everyone know who they are. But we also stand with the community feedback you received that supports option 3B. Option 3B makes it easier for communities to name themselves with support from the county while minimizing the impact on the county's general fund. Please vote for the recommendation 3B by county staff to make changes to the current signage program and use those other potential funds to invest in working families. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to the next caller.
Consuelo here. Hi, yeah, I would love to find out how to go about being on the committee for the signs. I have so many ideas, and I just talked to my husband, and we are both even willing to pay for these signs, and I just want to see how we go about doing that. I mean, we have, gosh, I can give you a few examples. One example of a sign, let's see. One is, if there is no justice for the people, let there be no peace for the government. And that is a saying from Emiliano Zapata. Another sign, a great idea is, every great injustice has been at the hands of someone just following orders. And then there's another idea of a sign. This would be really, really, really big, very pretty and colorful. Beware of a third wave of propaganda and a new strain of bullshit. That one says, unplug your TVs, lab rats. And then another idea is, let's see, oh yeah, this is a great one. The people who shut down your businesses and killed your careers are now asking that you reelect them so they can keep their jobs. Never forget what they've done to you. That's a really good one. Geez, I have thousands here. Let's see. Great one, great one. The highest form of ignorance is when you reject something you don't know anything about. Another one, let me see. Oh gosh. How do I go about being on this committee? Does anybody know? You can follow me on my Instagram handlebar thing is Freeple Society Chat. No, just Freeple Society. So please get in contact with me. I want to be a part of this committee. I have so many ideas of the signs, the director signs we can put out there on display for the people to wake the fuck up. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to the next caller.
Good morning. My name is Dolores Chavez Harms. I'm chair of Valley Center Community Planning Group. And we support this suggestion of community signs. A gateway sign into Valley Center would add to the traffic calming measures and aid other techniques that we really need in slowing down traffic upon entering our main commercial business district of Valley Center. The county, along with local residents, we're all very concerned about the number of accidents that happen when speeds are not reduced upon entering our community. With the addition of the new housing, the businesses and storefronts, it's critical that we do all we can to increase safety by calming traffic and remind motorists that they have entered Valley Center. They are not on a freeway or a highway anymore. So we strongly support this, and we thank the Board of Supervisors, especially Supervisor Desmond, who represents 5, for implementing the community identification signage program and the public right-of-way for District 5. And we look forward to having our community organizations represented as a welcome in and out of our community. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to the next caller.
It's truth. I thought Audra had a good point about how the price could be determined after the design and then after an installation estimate. I do want to support at least some of this item about decorative gateway community identification signs for community sense of identity. Sharing the history of the area through symbolic elements and welcoming visitors sounds great. That reminds me of the smaller, colorful rainbow heart sign in Hillcrest. I don't know about a rainbow sign, except for maybe in the rainbow area, of course. But I wouldn't mind seeing some unique community signs in Fallbrook Rainbow Valley Center, Bonsall, Rainbow Springs, Hidden Meadows, Palmer Mountain, and Twin Oaks Valley. Why not? Some of these areas have very unique names and artists to play off of in a sign design. The big community signs in North Park or El Cajon are great examples to add character to a neighborhood. Just for fun, let me suggest a sign design contest for every neighborhood who wants a sign. Consuelo, you may want to enter. So the item says that the green community identity signs are free, and the decorative community identification signs cost $75,000 to $245,000 per sign as planned by private citizens. This item's option of having the county, the public, paying up to $590,000 per sign sounds way too high. However, if you supervisors can stop wasting money on pet projects, for example, $50,000 in ARPA money spent for the Pride Parade as part of the neighborhood reinvestment budget, then the price sounds good if the communities are actually interested in these signs. Even fee waivers, specifically for the unincorporated areas to have decorative signs, sounds good if you supervisors can get your ridiculous spending under control.
Thank you. And Chair Fletcher, that concludes public comment on this item.
All right, so I think there's broad support behind doing much more than we've ever done around community signs, and I think that's a good thing. I think there's a universal agreement that we want to do more. We see the value in it, and we want to support our communities more. And obviously, you know, continuing the green sign program is fine. Waiving the fees seems like a just common sense thing that we need to do. And I think there is a desire on the part of the majority of the board to develop a decorative sign program where we're actually putting some money in. I agree with my colleagues that the initial kind of is proposed where we kind of bring things in a one-off fashion is probably not a good way to establish a policy, because it's also not, as Supervisor Wasserman said, it's not inherently fair to the community. They don't know what it is, and I think it would be good for us as a board to spend a little bit of time, doesn't need to take forever, but let's really develop it. You know, like, what is the initial design phase? Maybe supervisor offices need to kick in some design money to help with the community, and then we get a design and a budget. Maybe there's a matching program, you know, where there's some county funds, some private sector funds. I think taking a broader look and doing a quick touch base with some of the other community groups outside of D5 to kind of get their thoughts and input a little bit and see what they think. And then I think we can design and adopt a program where we're actually putting some money behind this. So it's not just on the communities to do it, but in a way that's a little more predictable and a little more standard. So Supervisor Desmond, what I'd like to suggest or recommend is we do 1, we do 2, we do 3B today, we do 4B, and we ask staff to come back on 3C. So to not immediately put this in place, but to really flush out 3C a little bit more. Engage some additional community groups, bring us a series of options around how we would structure this program in a way that's a little more predictable and reliable for the community, and do that as quickly as possible. This is not something that needs to go on forever, but I think, you know, we want to get out and talk to, you know, I don't think you have to talk to every community group in the unincorporated area, but let's get out in different areas, you know, and talk to a few, get their thoughts and input, and then I think we come back and we can adopt a decorative sign program that'll be in place. Because, again, the idea of just kind of one-off things and now without any criteria, I think is a better way. So that'd be my suggestion. It gets us moving, and I think you have a real commitment to really establish something and get it in place quickly that can serve all the residents. So that would be my suggestion.
Well, I can read the tea leaves. In which I'm fine. I think 3B, if we can get that done today, that'd be great. And you're right, 3C does need a little bit more structure, and it needs some more work. But and to Supervisor Vargas's and Lawson Reamer's point, some communities aren't going to be able to come up with much. Right. But maybe then they have, instead of a sign that spans the street, maybe it's a monument sign or something else that might be a little bit more. But I guess we'd ask staff. The only thing I'd ask is, don't give us 47 choices on a sum sheet that it comes back with. But I'd like to, so I agree, and I'll make that my motion. I'll make that my motion and to get this moving forward. And I appreciate all your support in weighing in, and this is moving forward. So thank you.
And let me just open it up to colleagues. So what we're doing on 3C is directing to bring us back some options about a kind of sustainable ongoing program that the county could adopt there. I mentioned a few things that might need to be considered, Supervisor Desmond. Let me ask my colleagues if there's anything you would like staff to really explore in that report back. Vice Chair Vargas?
Yeah, thank you so much. So I'm interested in knowing sort of what would be the limit per community per year, if there's one. What's the criteria that qualifies us for upholding the original description? Really looking into it, and I have a whole bunch of information, is it, size, text, all these other different things. I can follow up with you directly on some of that, but also because this would be a new program, making sure that we're monitoring, reporting back, and what kind of outreach we're going to do, and then what's the equity piece around it as well.
Wonderful. Supervisor Anderson, and then we'll go to Supervisor Wasserman.
Well, I'd just like to point out, when using an equity lens, I represent 200,000 residents in the unincorporated, and some people represent fewer. My budget, when using grants in my district, I have to prioritize the unincorporated because I'm the only government they have. And so in those communities, if we're asking for the supervisors' budgets to be a big portion of it, that means that somebody else in the unincorporated area isn't being helped. I have areas of San Diego that we're trying to participate, and I'm saying the city councilman needs to match whatever I do in that community because they have their own budget. But when I go to Lakeside, I'm their only budget. So I just would like that staff bear in mind as we move forward that we're the only government for the unincorporated, and anything that we do should enhance the lives of the people that solely rely on us. Thank you.
That's I think that's a fair point that we need to take into account. Also, unrelated to that, this program is only for the unincorporated. We're not getting in the business of building signs in incorporated cities. So this
Thank you for that clarification.
Is a separate item from the point Supervisor Anderson was making. Let's go to Supervisor Lawson-Remer. I think you're muted.
Sorry, I wasn't muted. Thank you, Chair Fletcher, for kind of creating a space for us to outline our questions so staff can have some guidance as they come back with options. I appreciate that. The things I'm most interested in is predictability, so that community groups really understand what's going to be expected of them and what's likely to get approved, so that they're not kind of embarking on an endeavor where they're trying to raise money from their community without any sense of how much they're likely to be able to get support for, and how that process is going to work. So I think some predictability to allow community groups to have a framework that when they decide they want to sign, they know what's going to be expected of them. Secondly, I think options around matching not just board office, neighborhood reinvestment funds, but also matching community groups. So sort of expecting that everyone has some skin in the game, that community groups are raising some of the funds themselves. I think that's really important. I know, again, it's in the cities, so it's not the same. It's certainly not relevant specifically, but I know in my district, a lot of the community groups have raised quite a bit of money on their own to put signs up, and have gotten a little bit of support from board offices and a little bit of support from city councils, but the bulk of the money they're raising on their own. And I think that's important because at the end of the day, although I'm very excited to support these signs, money spent on this is certainly less money being available for, seniors who might be being displaced from their homes, or individuals who are food insecure and need access to emergency shelter and food. And, we have a lot of really desperate needs in our county, and, don't want to be taken away from that when we don't have to. So I think that would be the second thing about matching. And I think the third thing is we need some kind of cap, right, to create incentives around being sort of cost conscious. I don't think we want to be spending hundreds of thousands of dollars per sign. So, how do we create incentives for community groups to pursue the most cost efficient design options? And so that we're not just, if they want to do something less cost efficient, then, that's on them. But, we're not going to be spending $600,000 per sign. So some kind of caps so that we incentivize, cost consciousness, but also so that we're not, ending up spending millions and millions of dollars every year on signs. So cap. And then I think the fourth thing, and this is not in the options category, this is in the study category, I just would like a much greater clarity of how many communities are we talking about, right? Because I think that informs what option makes sense. Are there 9? Are there 29? Are there 79 communities that we think maybe might be interested in the sign? And that demand assessment, I think is the right word, is an important missing piece of analytics in order to make a decision here.
Good.
And just real quick, while we're for staff direction, one thing I'd like to do is give the community the option for constructing it themselves, if that's the case. And maybe, maybe it's not raising money, but maybe there's several contractors that want to donate time or expertise or experience, and that might be an option. So, to be honest with you, it's more expensive if we build it than if they do it. So, if that, just have that as an option for the community, I think would be beneficial. But I really appreciate everybody's input on this, and it's got a good discussion going, so thank you very much.
Good. All right, we've got a motion and a second. Let me ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. Supervisor Anderson. Aye. Supervisor Lawson-Remer.
Aye.
Supervisor Desmond.
Aye.
Vice Chair Vargas.
Vargas, aye.
Chair Fletcher.
Fletcher, aye.
That motion passes unanimously with all supervisors being present and voting aye.
We will now resume non-agendized public communication. Ask the clerk to call forward our remaining speakers.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. We have 5 remaining public speakers on non-agenda, all coming via phone. So we will hear from those ever requested to speak by phone. If when it is your turn to speak, you will be unmuted and you will hear a recording that will tell you to begin your comments after the beep. I'd like to remind the callers that they should mute their TV or live video stream before they begin speaking. And we'll give the callers a second to call into call-in studio. Okay, we will begin with our first caller. And again, I'd like to remind the callers they should mute their TV or live video stream before they begin speaking. And if you could please state your name for the record.
Morning, Kathleen Lippert here. With an MPH concentration in sound public behavioral health drug policies, I have worked with communities throughout San Diego to raise community capacity to make healthy and safe choices on behalf of youth and young adults. Today, those efforts are more challenging than ever. The marijuana industry profits have increased since voters were first misled by Prop 215 and then Prop 64. Legalization and regulations were the Trojan horses of the marijuana industry. The profits and influence of the industry have led to public health electeds and public health department officials silencing themselves on the harms of marijuana. Worse, the board majority has partnered to maximize industry profits by increasing the availability, use, and abuse of high THC products. A recent UT editorial spoke of growing pains of California's cannabis experiment, but similar to the UT's support of Prop 64 that presumed legalization and regulations would be paid for by tax revenues. Legalization and regulations were the industry's solution to growing the market. The article acknowledges marijuana industry's interests are not the same as society's, but it fails to appreciate how the industry's economic conflicts of interest in the absence of public health interest opposition have led to the public health problems and safety harms that we're seeing today, from dangerous product potencies and mental health impacts, resource draining treatment needs, and ER visits. Marijuana users begged for regulations that would enhance consumer safety, but establishing a government bureaucracy never results in reducing a social problem, but in growing it. If public health electeds cared to pay attention to the harms that have continued to accumulate, they would recognize the importance of addressing root causes.
Thank you. Your time is up. We'll go to our next caller.
Truth. When's the last time you gave money to seniors, Tara? Please. In the May 24th meeting, Paul Hankin described a data-driven method as being cold calculations without human emotional input, appeals, or contextual factors. Well, I wanted to add to his analysis. That same ideology was originally called scientific socialism, which believed that humans could be managed just like ants. The funny thing about numbers, though, is that they can be fudged by all sides. For example, in the Soviet Union, when various 5-year plans were being implemented and there were certain quotas for, say, wheat harvest, people would just say they harvested more, and because there were lives on the line, money to be made, and agendas to be propagated, the false numbers were reported all the way up to the central government authorities and repeated through their propaganda media outlets. The result was data-driven death. And here in America, for example, we've had Deborah Birx and Anthony Fauci reporting false COVID deaths by the inclusion of people who die with COVID but not from COVID using faulty tests. This data-driven ideology is also called technocracy, which is used as a means of calculating and thus controlling inputs and outputs of all resources on Earth. Isn't that right, Tara? For further understanding and research on this topic, I recommend Patrick Wood's video entitled Trilateral Commission and Technocracy from 2013, which is amazingly still available on YouTube. So on May 10th, the supervisors decided to irresponsibly allow minors to ride public transit for free. Keep in mind, there's no public transit that has security available at all times. So for the record, I witnessed 3 unaccompanied minors riding public transit without a guardian present. The oldest child was no older than 12, with the other 2 children being around 10 and 5 years old. Just as so many commenters have pointed out, child trafficking is
Thank
really
you. Your time is up. We'll go to the next caller.
Hello, this is Kelly McCormick. I'm a public health educator with a focus on youth alcohol, tobacco, and drug prevention. Yesterday, I attended a presentation on the growing number of young children who are taken to Rady Children's Hospital due to accidental exposure to THC, the psychoactive ingredient in marijuana. The majority of these children were exposed in their own homes from marijuana edibles belonging to one of their parents. Of the marijuana edibles consumed by the children, fruity candies were responsible for 73% of the cases, followed by marijuana chocolates and marijuana brownies. These products are packaged to look just like regular gummies and candy bars. The packages are easy to open since child-resistant packaging is not required. Of the children brought to Rady's emergency department, 58% were admitted for care, with 10% taken to PICU, the Pediatric Intensive Care Unit. Dr. Natalie Lobb said children admitted to the PICU were in danger of dying. Symptoms included an altered mental state, irregular heart rate, slowed breathing, lethargy, seizures, and dizziness, to name just a few of the effects suffered by these toddlers. It is vital that parents be made aware of the danger posed by having unsecured marijuana edibles in the home. California is failing in this regard. Consumers are not receiving the necessary warnings, and products are sold in unsafe packaging. Children are suffering in the rush to commercialize marijuana. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to our next caller.
Ann Riddle. Thank you for this opportunity to share some responses to the wonderful workshop that the previous caller mentioned that many of us in public health and in the parent community attended. It was provided by the county's Marijuana Prevention Initiative, also called YAW, Youth Access Work Group, because of the concern within the public health community with the way that our young people are receiving messages regarding marijuana. One of the things that struck home to me as a parent and a grandparent was the degree of anxiety and agitation the children presented with at the hospital, or the very sleepy, they couldn't wake up their children, a scary situation for any parent. They mentioned that the arrhythmia that the children were presenting with took on two types: tachycardia, which is rapid heartbeat, or bradycardia, which is very slow heartbeat. I think we're all very concerned that our children are not having the protections they need, and look forward to the idea that you as the Board of Supervisors will do more to get the messages out and get it beyond the public health community so our children can be protected. I think it's important to remember why we're concerned about marijuana storefronts in the unincorporated area is that it's like a white flag being waved, that this is a product that's okay to use. It's a product that can solve problems. It is not a product that's okay to use, and it doesn't solve any problems. And we in the public health community are very concerned that the enlarging of the footprint of marijuana businesses in the unincorporated area do far more harm. And thank you for letting me share this thought.
Thank you. And Chair Fletcher, that concludes the request for non-agenda public communication this morning.
That concludes the business before the board today. Hope everyone has a great day.
The next regular meeting of the board will take place on Tuesday, August 30th at 9 a.m.